Hey, good afternoon, LinkedIn. Dave Wilson of the Ring and Hire Show. Hey, two great topics: questions you should avoid and things to avoid in job interviews, and also some of the complaints that we see about recruiters, and it goes on both ways. So we're going to talk about those things. We'll be right back after this. Hey, these two things I want to discuss are some of the great conversations that everybody likes to chime in on, and that's things that you should avoid in a job interview, and then what happens with recruiters afterwards. There were some things I've done some research. Listen, I mean, everybody goes to Google, so you think you know everything, right? But everybody goes to Google, so you got to say, wow, is that true? And they talked about things that you should not do to avoid in a job interview, I should say. Arriving late. That's just common sense, right? Poor time management. It just decreases your ability to be punctual and to be unpredictable. You always want to leave early. Everybody knows that. Just leave. Or do a practice run, and come back. And then give a little time for traffic. You never know. They're saying you should arrive, 10 minutes early. Then some were saying 15, no more than 15 minutes early, because it makes them, the recruiter or hiring manager, upset because you're sitting out there. Listen, to me, I'd rather have a person there early that's sitting there and when you walk in, say, listen, I am early, take your time. I just wanted to make sure I was here. That can put an end to that right away. No problem. So, the other one is appearing unpolished. Wrinkled, stained shirts, wearing clothes that don't fit. It's not a fashion show, but you got to really think about it. What do you want to wear towards an interview? And it can be all about, I forgot my suit here, banner. It can be all about what type of job it is. Do you need to wear a suit and tie if you're going to a construction job? No. Do you need to wear casual if you're going to an entry-level job? You can dress casual, light industrial, jeans, nice polo shirt. First impressions are the most important. It's just like the military. That's what geared us. My father sent us all to the military. First impressions are the most important. So dress the part. It's common sense. Don't just wear anything just to go to it. I just want to say something like that. I don't know, but dress the part. The next one is about not bringing a resume. Bring 2 to 3 copies in a folder. This way, everybody has a copy. They're saying, sometimes the hiring manager doesn't have time. I'm sorry. The hiring manager should have time to grab a resume also, but it's also good to have if they didn't, because it shows you're prepared. But that shows that they're unprepared also. Now, it goes both ways. The show here is not just to tear up recruiters and the interview process. I'm not here to discuss it like that. There's 2 sides of every story. So the next one, like I said, about bringing a resume, you want to bring one. A couple, I'm sorry. Displaying low energy. Listen, you're nervous. That's always like that. People get nervous. So as a hiring manager, if you've been doing it long enough, you're okay with that. Some of the questions that people ask, and I'm going to go over them, you might not answer it like you did. You'll go home later and you'll be like, damn, why did I answer that like that? And if you're sitting there, slumped shoulders and your back like this, or, your eye contact, you're not talking right here. Like I'm looking at this little dot. If I was to look down and talk all the time, you wouldn't see my face, but try to keep direct eye contact. When you shake your hand, usually sometimes it's the fist pump now. Hit them real hard. No, just, bump it lightly if that's what they want to do, Another thing is focusing too much on yourself, talking endlessly about what you want, how the job is the direction you want to go in your career. Companies don't want to help you out. They hire you because you have traits and skills that's going to help them achieve their goals. If that makes sense. So try not to just make it all about yourself. Listen, if you haven't been in an interview in a while, if you haven't done one in 10, 12 years, some of the questions haven't changed. They're the basic questions, but you need to be prepared. If you've interviewed for 10 jobs already and you've gone through it, you're pretty prepared. You can keep your one list there, but do your research on the company. That's what I always say. You can wing it and walk the talk, or fake it till you make it, but that's not always a good thing. But always remember too that people are nervous. They might not give that right answer, but if you hear that one or two words, that's good enough for even myself as a hiring manager. That's the kind of things I like to hear from somebody. And it doesn't matter how they say it, but I look for those words and go back like that. So if you see they're nervous, just relax. Bring something up else. Make the candidate feel good about themselves, talk about their family. Let's talk about your hobbies. That's always a good thing, icebreaker to do in the beginning. So, but that's one of the things is seeing unprepared. The next one, not having questions. The phone interviews that are just, they're calling you just to get a sense. They look at your resume and they call you for 10, 15 minutes, just to see who you are, what your qualifications are. Then they move you to the next step. A lot of people complain about that. Listen, I kind of agree with it in a way. At least the hiring manager is taking a little time out because they can call and get a kind of sense of a feeling what the person's looking for in a way, and then forward them on to your hiring manager that's hiring for that position. So you hear complaints saying about that and not having questions. You should just write basic questions down. Don't just quickly look at the website and think you're an expert. Try to look what their culture is. Look at the reviews. That's a good thing. I know people don't always agree with reviews, but you can still get some out of it. If you have 700 to 800 reviews on your website and you have a 4.0, right? I would say that's pretty good. In the staffing industry, like light industrial and all that, 3.0 is probably average. That's a good company. 1.0, 2.0, it's just people that are venting, but it's not always. If you have the same review over and over, that's when you need to look at something. So, question. And if you just freeze up, what does success look like in this role? What's the culture here? What's it like? What do you offer? You can come up with, have your list over here of freeze questions and try to get yourself back engaged and relaxed and get back into the conversation. Another one is following up on the emails. Listen, within 24 hours is the norm of saying thank you for your time and your interview, and I appreciate it. And if you had one question or something, a basic one, that's okay. Like, what's the time frame? But saying thank you, and then let it go. Don't go calling 2-3 times in a week or something, or sending another email after that. If they're a good company, they're going to send something to you. I believe if you've had a phone screen, if you've had an interview, you need to get back to the candidates out of respect so much, because you don't want them to leave with a bad taste, saying, hey, wow, this company doesn't care, or they've never even got back to me. And we're going to talk about that shortly. But some of the things that I've seen people do in an interview is, I couldn't believe, is checking your phone. take your phone, shut it off, and leave it in the car. You know, leave it in there. Don't bring it in for an interview and set it up on the table and then shut it off. It's just not respectful. And if the hiring manager there is with a laptop or a cell phone, and then they answer calls while you're in that interview, listen, I don't agree with that. If you're asking a candidate, this is just reversing the roles. If you're asking a candidate not to answer their cell phone, you sure damn shouldn't be answering your own cell phone. Shut it off. It's just respect both ways. If you have 30 minutes scheduled with that employee, you close the door, set the phone out there. You don't need to be on your laptop and saying, okay, so hold on 1 second, I'm going to answer this. I've seen it, you know, and candidates pick up on that. So you got to back off, you know, keep that 30 minutes or whatever time blocked out one-on-one with your candidate that you're hiring. So the next one, sounding rehearsed. Listen, this is what people Google. It could be because they're frustrated. You know, a candidate that's been applying 10, 15 jobs, or just going through the drills. You know, hey, the same questions, but try to, you know, just keep positive about it. Keep positive. Listen, if they don't choose you, that's not your fault. You know, if you feel you fit, listen, the interviewer has control. I mean, if they don't feel you're a fit, they don't look the way you look, they don't look the way you sit, they don't look the way you anything dress, you know, and the way you answer questions. Some people answer questions differently in a different tone. So your tone, if it's a quiet person, they're shy. Listen, I've interviewed those type of candidates. You go with the flow with it. They might be nervous. They might be shy. Maybe they're just don't know what to ask, right? It's an entry level positions. They've gone to college. They don't know some of the interview skills, and you can get that out of a candidate. You don't really need, when you look at their resume, listen, and if it's only their first or second job, come on, you gotta, there's nothing you can do there. You got to really just get to know the candidate. And also, if you have 10 years, you need to get to know the candidate, and you need to check their resume and read it specifically what you have on there, because if you have a candidate come in and you're interviewing them and they don't meet the goals or the job description, that's on you. That's on you. Why would you even call the candidate in? Because you're not reading anything. You're not learning anything about the candidate. Well, yeah, okay, 2 things and put it off. And then when you get the person there, for an example, if the recruiter hasn't read the position, I had an interview and it was for a pharmaceutical. And I understood, you know, it's a staffing agency, and I took the interview and I took it. And this gentleman was saying, yeah, have you ever found scientist? Woo, scientist, what? No, but I could find them. I mean, then you get into that no category. Well, he's never had IT experience or scientist. So when you go back to that recruiter at that staffing agency and say, listen, they were asking for scientists, and the recruiter says, oh, I didn't know that. Come on. You weren't even paying attention to the customer then. If you're looking at that and you're just sending somebody, that threw me off so much. And I'm not making this about me. I'm just being honest. Scientists. And I don't know what else to say. I was like, well, I kept going along with the flow. And listen, it does not matter. If you're in staffing and you're a good recruiter, I find that when other recruiters ask you, like right off the bat, have you ever done this type of staffing? No. So right away, there's like, oh, we can't use it. No. There's no way we want to train somebody. Listen, if you're a good recruiter, you can read a job description. You can research the job really well. And if you give that person, if they're like that eye of the tiger, they want a chance, you got to sit back, right? And how's it going for you now when you constantly see on LinkedIn, wow, we can't find candidates? You discounted that recruiter because of 2 or 3 things. It doesn't matter to me who I recruit or what I recruit. You want me to go to a zoo and get some animals, I'll find you them. It doesn't matter. Listen to the candidate. You might be surprised what you get from there. Not making the most of your time. You know, have your list of questions and really try to reverse the interview. As you're talking, come back with a question. Put them on the spot, because sometimes they don't know. the recruiter, this goes both ways, but the recruiter's going to go, that's a good question. I don't know, but let me get back to you. That's great right there. So when you say, let me get back to you, you need to follow up with that candidate. There's nothing wrong about not knowing it. Listen, not all the times, even the best recruiters, you can miss a question, or they might have something about your policies, right? And you might not know, but don't sugarcoat it. They're going to know it. So just be honest. Listen, I don't know, but within the next 30 minutes, you're going to have that answer. When you leave, I'll get a hold of you and let you know. Forgetting something. These are just people that Google things and they're reading this stuff. Forgetting something. I think sometimes in an interview, you forget things. Like, I'm going to go back to this one interview, asking for a certain, have you done this? Okay. Yes, I have. Okay. Still continuing. Have you done this? Second, third time. Yes. But what are you talking about? You need to be really clear when you're interviewing people, and you need to know that job. Because again, they're going to reverse the roles. They're going to come back with a question that you don't know. Again, that's okay. You both should be nervous. Listen, interviews, I don't care how long you've been a hiring manager. It doesn't matter how many years, like ourselves. But it's okay to be a little nervous yourself, because that candidate in front of you might be very, very intimidating. But that's good. Don't put them in the no section because they know a lot. That makes sense, because a lot of candidates, even on LinkedIn, say that they are overqualified. You're overqualified. Why would you be applying for this job? Biased. Do you know why? Don't assume that you know why they've applied for this job. Listen, the way things have happened this last year and a half, maybe this person is just wants to change career paths and have work-life balance, right? They've worked at home. Maybe they want that type of work. So if it's a salary of 10 to 15,000 less, so what? If they're overqualified, what do you have to lose? That makes no sense. That candidate's putting themselves out there knowing that the salary is way lower. But don't put them in the no pile for that. Don't. You need to put them in like the yes pile, and at the end, when you go through everything, think about it. Some of the recruiters, and it goes both ways, but some of the recruiters will say they'll never stay, right? How do you know? You cannot assume. You could live 15 minutes from a site, right? Or you've been traveling an hour and 10 minutes, say, to work. Maybe the candidate just wants to take a 15-minute ride, and it's personal to them. So they might not need that higher salary. So think about that. Speaking poorly about past jobs. You don't want to get into that tit for tat. My wife calls it tit for tat. She always says, Dave, you're tit for tat. If you've left a company on a note that you can't let it go, or you want to say something, just let it go. It feels better when you do. But when you're in an interview, you don't really want to get in there and just bash the company. Listen, if you've got 10, 15 years and you're getting interviewed with one company, they know something happened. You just don't leave 10 to 15 years. The percentage is low because they've been there. They've grown with the company. So don't assume that, that you want them talking about their job. Don't even ask that question. Some people say, why are you leaving your job? You want me to tell you the truth, or do you want me to make it up? You see what I'm saying? So why did you leave your job? You can word it around it. And if you were let go, I don't like saying fired, but if you were let go for, say, absenteeism, something happened in your family, you don't have to explain all that to the interviewer. Some people have gaps right now. There was a couple of people on LinkedIn that were very upset because they had a gap, and they believed they didn't get it because of that, because an employer was saying, well, you've been off for 6 months. You don't really have to ask. You can ask why, but don't hold that candidate responsible. Say something happened with their family. They might be honest with you. I had to take care of my mother. Listen, I was out of work for 2 months taking care of my mom. That was well worth it. I didn't care about the job. But everything else, when it comes to family, that's an easy choice for leaving a company or anything like that. It's just for a gap. I left because I had to take care of a family member. You don't have to explain that. You know, if they're a good interviewer, recruiter, they'll understand that and they can sell that to the client. You know, if the client says to the recruiter, "Hey, why has this person been out?" You can just word it differently. You don't have to really getting into the nit and grit unless they really press it. If they press those type of questions, I wouldn't want to work for a company that does that, because there is always something that can happen between 10 and 15 years. If they're a job hopper, you're going to see it 6 months here, 5 months there. But one quick story on that: don't ever just always assume. Keep reading that, because I had a candidate that I always talk about that when I asked her, she said, "Dave, I really like working for staffing companies." She says, "I like to work when I want." Think about it. So her whole resume had like 8 jobs, but she was only working when she wanted to. And that's what's great about staffing companies. If it's short-term assignment, listen, if it's a 10-week assignment, I'm going to take it. Then I can take off some time, maybe with her family during the summer. But don't ever assume. Don't assume. Some of the, again, we talked about look the part. Pick 3 things that you want to say about yourself during an interview. Just have them written down. Maybe your hobbies. Maybe you volunteer. I always say, volunteer work in the military. Listen, if you say you're in the National Guard, those days are over where you want to hold that against somebody because they have to go away for 1 weekend a month. Listen, they're in the National Guard. They're rising up high because with the military, your qualifications are not there, right? A lot of people just put U.S., and so do I, U.S. Army, military veteran. With a veteran, you're going to get a few things. You're going to get integrity, right? How do you measure that in an interview? You're going to get leadership. I love my wall. I'm very proud of all my awards, and I'm not going to get into that, but I am very, very proud. I worked hard to get these, certificates and medals, and my flag back here. I love that. That's where I've flown this in South Korea on my tank. I was a tank commander, and that flag means a lot to me because it was in another country. But my point is integrity, leadership, honesty, and loyal as a veteran. But you can't put them on there. So some recruiters think, wow, they were just in the Army or they were just in the Marines. No, stop. Put the brakes on there. That's why veterans are, I'm strong on that, on veterans to hire. And I'm also second chances. Listen, I have a reason for that. My brother, he's made a few errors in his life, but when he comes out, it's okay. People need to tap into that type of industry of second chances, because if it wasn't something major or anything like that, find out. People make mistakes, but don't hold it against them for the rest of their life. Don't, because that person made a bad choice, right? They've learned. So again, military, those 4 things are not going to be on that resume. I wish they were, and I wish people would understand veterans more about them and what they've done to get to that point of 4 years in the military, 8 years, 12, 15, whatever. Just think of that. Keep that on the note. Be clueless about the company. We talked about that. When do you talk about money? That's salary. That's usually up to the recruiter. Into 2 to 3 questions. Maybe you just want to bring that out here. But this is the thing that I get irritated at is that they'll put a salary range on there, say 55K to 75. Okay. You know what the salary is. You do. You see it. It's in that job ad. But when you interview and then you're coming back to somebody and it's even a little bit lesser than that, oh, we start you out at this, but then you can make up to that. Not all the job ads. There's some of them, it's common sense. But my point there is if you're advertising that, bring it up. Hey, what are your salary expectations? And in your mind, you're going to say right about the middle majority of the time, or you might go higher. But don't discount that right off the bat unless you really know as a recruiter that you're not going to get that amount. Be honest right there and say, listen, I just want to be real honest with you. I don't believe I can get, that extra 10,000. I can present it to the client Don't, especially nowadays, just because it says, like, for example, 75K max, right? You put a good candidate in front of a client and you're going to say, listen, look at this resume. I really believe in this person and I would really take a hard look at this. And this is what they're asking. The worst thing that can happen is a company says no, or they say yes. We're going to offer, we'll speak with them and we might take that salary because you're crazy not to, but that's in today's world. You're going to have to go to it wasn't like that, but now you can negotiate normally. I would say as an employee, you have the upper hand right now. It's an employee's market, but be careful with that because a year from now, that might be reversed because then I don't think it's going to happen because they're so far backlogs, everything like that, but it can be reversed. And then it's like, now it's a corporation or a business. They're in charge now versus the employee. So, look at that. The next part is, I love this part, some of the interview questions. Listen, some of the interview questions are the same back 25, 30 years ago. You need to stop using Google. And really, as a hiring manager, you should train your recruiters. And not, again, this isn't bashing recruiters because I am one. Not all recruiters are bad. Recruiters are bad or, not as organized. There is some really seriously good recruiters out there that take their time and they work with you, and you're going to remember that. So this, when I talk about it, it goes both ways. So on some of this stuff, for example, if you're asking for 3 references. Hey, can you provide 3 references? Sure. Do you really? I find myself personally, I don't ask for them. And I'm going to give you the reason why. Unless you have numbers, and I'll get into that. But you're not going to give somebody a reference that's bad. I don't think there's anybody out there that can disagree with that. Listen, am I going to go to a person in the office I worked with that we didn't get along and say, hey, can you write me a personal reference? Sure. It's not happening. So when you ask for references, unless it's something in a high level position to where you need numbers, you need a reference of what was completed, not just a reference of they came to work on time, they did this budget here without numbers. So look at that a little bit differently there, that question. The next one is how do you handle stress and pressure? The question, it's a good question. I think you need to be a little bit more defined on what you're going to ask there. Like, can you give us an example of how you handled stress and pressure on a project? That opens the door to where you should be prepared to answer that with numbers, whatever you're looking for, your experience or what has happened. Come up with a good one. You can make all the calls you want, but if you're truthful, it's going to show when you're talking because you honestly know what you're talking about. So that one there, I don't know. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Think about it. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? What answer am I going to say to you if you ask that? That's going to make you want to hire me. Well, I see myself as having a job and providing for my family and maybe move up to management. Some people are okay where they're at. It's a goal. That question there is just outdated. I mean, I don't get it. It's like 12% on the mark of what not to ask. And this is where a hiring manager of the staffing companies or corporations can really train your recruiters. Again, not bashing recruiters. This goes both ways. So the next one is, what is your biggest weakness? This even gets lower. People still asking that. I don't know. Biggest weakness? Why do I want to down myself? I don't. You want me to say? What am I going to say for you? What is your biggest weakness, Dave? I'm not organized. I don't know this. You understand what I'm saying? Try to get that question out of there. I don't understand it. I'm not, like I said, organized. I'm running late. Hey, there's Jill. I think, geez, I haven't seen her in a long time. Hey, Jill, how you doing? She's one of my great colleagues and friends. So the next question that's funny is, why do you hire me? Why should we hire you? In an interview, why should we hire you? Unless you really have specific reasons, in numbers and backing things up, that you can come back and say, well, my team, I would get used to saying my team, or I myself. Don't make it all about I, but include that word teamwork in there, because if it's with your team, say it. But that question there, that ranked on the lower scale, is also, why should we hire you? How do you answer, tell me about yourself? That's pretty easy. They have that low, but I think it's a good question. I mean, you can bring up there that with what type of work you've done. Maybe you do some volunteer work with the fire companies, and all different kind of donations there where you've worked at nonprofits. Put that in there, because hiring managers like that. They should. For the recruiting, they should be like, wow, look, this person's been off, or else they're working and they're an EMT or something like that. It's non-paid. So they volunteer every month down at the food bank. That might not sound too much, but that means they're going that extra effort to help somebody. So you have to look at the quality of the person for that. Look at the person, listen to what they have a hobby, and you can put that into your work of how they're going to help you. Again, the other one is, what are your future goals? It's kind of the same as where you see yourself in 5 years. I don't know my future. I want to work. I want to climb the corporate ladder. I want to get into management, learn more skills. But future goals, work with a great company and just, work as a team and grow, and hopefully still be within that company, so that's a different type of questions. I told you about, tell me about your last job. What am I going to say? There's two things. What am I going to say? Tell me about your last job. Talk about it. Talk about what you did, what kind of things you completed. Maybe you had some tasks, everything that you got it done, but don't bash them. Don't bash the company. You don't want to get into that, because I would read that. Listen, as much as I want to tell the truth, some people, if it wasn't their fault, they have to kind of talk to themselves and say, wow, I have to make up an excuse for something that happened to me that wasn't my fault, or it was. So it goes both ways. Can you share a weakness? Again, maybe it's me. Why were you fired? If you had said that you were terminated, why were you fired? I just personally would not say I was terminated. Ending of the assignment, your visions didn't align, because it's okay, because if new management comes in, maybe then the culture's changed. You're looking at somebody that wasn't your fault, and you have to explain it. Try to just kind of think of what you're going to say there. Really write it down, because if you're nervous, you might jump in there and talk too much. And that's the reason why I don't like that one. Why have you decided to apply for this position? I mean, you're qualified. You've done your research. Again, you can have positive and negative on this one. I kind of like it, as long as you're aligned with it. Listen, I read about your company culture. I enjoy looking at your reviews. I noticed that the benefits that people have really said a lot of great things online about. Your friends, your colleagues saying, hey, you got to come work for this company. So there's a lot of good reasons you could put on there. And I like that kind of question, as long as you do your research and what you're looking for. So let's see. How do you see yourself? Okay. What are good words to describe yourself? I'm almost done. This is true. I mean, if you want to describe yourself, persistent, genuine, patient, considerate, independent, resourceful, courageous, witty, chill. I don't know about the chill word. Fearless, open-minded, joyful, practical, energetic, easygoing. They're all good words. So if you had to describe yourself with positive words, they're pretty good words. I mean, I like them. And, I think as a hiring person, the manager or the recruiter, you'll sit back and say, wow, I like that. It's different. Two more things here. How long after should you give up on an interview? Listen, after 10 days to 14 days, forget about it. You're not going to get a call unless they've already hired somebody, they didn't show up, or it didn't work out. You might, but I wouldn't waste your time. Try to get that in an interview question. Hey, when are you going to make a decision? Because if you wait 10 to 14 days and you're not keeping that candidate engaged for some reason, if you're not, saying, hey, listen, we have to interview 3 to 5 people. We are going to make a decision for the second round next week. But once you start getting to that third or fourth week in a even above average entry level middle management, they're not going to wait. I don't blame them. They're not going to wait 2 to 3 weeks. And then if they do get hired, by the time they get paid, you're talking over a month without getting any kind of income. So the way things are today, and this thing coming up about the big exit in August, how everybody's going to leave their jobs. And I've said that before, respectively, it's okay, let them leave. If the company cannot provide for what they want, if they don't show empathy and they don't align, it's okay, leave, because somebody else will fill that position. Will they be as good? Maybe not. Are they able to complete the job? Sure. Take a little bit longer. Could you get a better candidate? Yes. You could get somebody that, that eye of the tiger I saw again is they might excel in that position. So don't worry about that. Keep your hands tied behind your back if an employee says they're going to leave. That's their choice. But you have to show empathy. So let's see. Calling too often makes you look needy. Some of the complaints people have on LinkedIn about recruiters, again, reverse the role. I always say reverse the role. If you've had a job for 10 years right now or 15 and you're the interviewing manager or staffing or corporate, and you have a job, there's nothing worse than not having and you're really looking for one. So reverse the roles, because it could happen to you one day. And wait till you see what happens when they're waiting on you. Reverse it. That candidate is looking for a job, looking to go home and say, wow, I think I passed this interview. I'm going to the second one positively. And then bam, you just give it to them and say no, with a little short note or text. Come on. If you've read their resume, right, and they fit, you have talked to them, it takes you 1 minute to call that candidate and say, listen, John, Bob, Sandy, whatever, you didn't get the position because of this reason. Give the candidate a reason. Don't, well, you're underqualified, you're overqualified. Listen, if you've, in a staffing agency, if you've sent them to a client and that client just says no because of this, that feedback can be important to the candidate. That little bit of feedback, not just never hear nothing. The recruiter never calls you back. It goes both ways though, because some recruiters are really good recruiters and the candidates don't call them back. So again, it goes both ways. But if you're a recruiter and you just don't want to call, you shouldn't be a recruiter. Again, reverse the roles and you'll understand that. Let's see, the reviews, again, I like reviews. If they're done correctly, you got to take the bad with that. That's always going to happen. But if you can get some really good reviews on why they should hire you or why about your company, and for candidates to apply, it's priceless, very priceless. The lack of expertise of the recruiter is if you don't know the job you're recruiting for, hand it off to somebody else. If you don't understand it, that's a really good thing. Hey, we got James all the way from the UK. I love it. Jill, this guy's all the way from the UK. James Pemberton, having applied for hundreds of jobs, as you know, the worst thing is not hearing anything, waiting to hear. It takes seconds to send an email, and it means so much to that person. And I'm going to leave that up. And that's exactly what I'm talking about right there, is not just such a short, make a call, leave a message, say, hey, give me a call back. I'm going to give you some feedback. It's going to go a long way, I'm telling you. Not just when you're looking on LinkedIn now, a lot of these posts, that have applied for hundreds of jobs or 20 jobs, and they've never heard nothing back. They're discouraged, they're upset, they're tired. Again, reverse those roles. And if it was you on the opposite side, again, respectively, not saying all recruiters are like this. Again, there's some fantastic recruiters out there. So like James said here, get back with them, look at the reviews. And I think I went over it all. Oh, the job description. Really write a good job description about what you're offering. Not always, you don't have to always put the salary. I know people are going to say, what are you talking about? You want people to have interest. All right. Everybody's saying right now you're short staffed, you're having a hard time finding people. If you've read their resume or CV, as they say in the UK, if you've read the resume and you don't know their salary requirements, I recommend doing that sometimes, because you're going to get candidates that are going to be a really good fit. There are some good ATS systems out there that will pick up on that. And then you'll have 12, 15 candidates versus 2. I mean, you might find somebody good out of that 12 to 15, because when you talk about the job salary, you can negotiate. But you really want to talk so positive about your company. Not put your job description. I recommend putting the perks and putting your culture up top first. Listen, the average person doesn't read that whole description. You start, some of them are 3 pages. You're like, oh, geez, I do that. Put really positive things. The things that candidates are looking for, put them up front. Put them right out in front of them. So this way they read that first. When I posted a job description 2 days ago, I've been getting some good hits for entry-level positions. I put in there about family, and I know James with 3 kids. Family values, work-life balance. Are you tired of working for a staffing agency with no benefits? Listen, we offer top-notch benefits, free. We offer childcare. You can offer like a certain amount of money towards childcare. If somebody reads that right off the bat, they're going to be like, "Hey, look at this, free childcare." Some companies are moving towards that right now to get candidates to come. They're offering $150, $200 towards your child's childcare. Wouldn't that be, if you were reading a job description, you didn't even get down to that job, that would make you kind of excited. And then put down the job description, but it doesn't have to be 3 pages long. If you're good at writing job descriptions, you'll get the right candidates. And if you're looking for keywords, Google them or look at other people's. I just go on other people's. When I look at other job descriptions, to be honest, I go to a bunch of different companies and I look. I'm like, wow, it's kind of like the what do you call that show about the wolf, and he's going to blow the house down. You find one thing that's good, and the next one you're like, nah, and the other one you're like, oh hell no. But you can really come up with a great job. James did a great show with us. Hey James, that show's still gaining grounds. We're getting a lot of hits on that. So really look at the person's resume, their work environment, talk about your opportunities, your brand values. That's awesome. Your business innovation. That's really great. And provide the candidate feedback. So on that note, wow, getting better at this 45 minutes show. Whew, when you're talking to this little dot up here. But seriously, in closing, as a recruiter myself, reverse the roles, really put yourself in that person's shoes. Read some of the posts on LinkedIn. Some of them are really heartbreaking. You got to show empathy. You got to be like, what is wrong? Their resume is like top notch. Hire yourself somebody that's professional that can really help. And if you can articulate it, they will for you. And a good resume writer is really good, because they're going to find the skills that you're saying, those key words, and they know what to write. So they're good at doing that. So I recommend. But give the feedback. Call them, send an email saying, hey, James, listen, I talked with a client. I don't really know. I'd be honest. If you don't know why, if the company didn't give you, they don't have to give you a reason. They really don't. They can just say, no, we're not going to move on with this candidate. And if that's the case, I would be honest with my candidate. I would be like, listen, James, I don't know why they didn't accept. I asked them numerous times and they didn't give me an answer. I'd rather have somebody tell me that than nothing. Then also, if the candidate has meet all those standards, they don't understand why. You see that on LinkedIn. You don't understand why they haven't hired you, or reached out to you. Sometimes the resume never even gets there. So if you really want to do your homework, that's where LinkedIn comes in. LinkedIn, social media, whatever. But I really like LinkedIn for this. Message them. Personally, just send them a message. What's the worst that something's going to happen? I'm going to give you an example. I saw this job on LinkedIn that I really liked. 25 minutes from my house. I saw it said message me on LinkedIn or send an email. So I'm connected with this person. I sent the message on LinkedIn. Hey, I'm interested, blah, 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 wrote it. Please contact me. I went ahead and looked at the post and I commented on it. So he saw that. And he hasn't answered. So some people say, well, they don't check all their messages. Okay. But then the next day, when you see that they've posted, why, if they got the message, why they told you to message them and you did, and they didn't return it. At this point of the game, if this gentleman messaged me now, forget that. You've posted 10 different posts and you haven't answered your purposeful message that you said to message them. Think of it. Think about what you're saying and what you're doing. Because if it's in seriousness, you got to put that empathy on a candidate. Again, recruiters aren't, there are some great recruiters and they really know what they're doing. So, but just think about that stuff. And I appreciate it. And James, what you said right here, having applied for 100s of jobs. And I know James, he might be in the UK, but we talk on video all the time and he's been on my show. This gentleman's very qualified with events, and lighting, and he wants to really work. He likes even the, working in the carnival. So lighting, the music, he doesn't care. He's been on the other side and he's picked up a role, but he needs to provide for his family. So that's why I think we really get along great, is because we're in the same position. I have him on the show to help him, even though, yes, he is in the UK. But when he's posted videos of our shows, that's helps me and it helps him. So, and now we've got a great connection here. So if I knew James and was in the US here, I guarantee that he would help me if I needed it. And I would help him if he needed it. Don't be afraid to put yourself out there. I am telling you, the Ring of Hire show here that I have is, if you're looking for a job, I already have another person, Brittany, on Tuesday. Listen, I will give you an interview on this stage, a global stage here, of talking with you, getting to know you. And all it takes is that one hiring manager to see this. And if you do your homework afterwards, do I guarantee it? No. But take, like James, that's a long story what this guy does, but step out of your safety zone. Step out of that safety zone and go right after. If you want to work at that company, make a video, put that baby right on LinkedIn or as a message, send that to a hiring manager, send it to the CEO, send it to the VP. If they really, listen, if I was in a higher up position and I had somebody that was looking for an entry level job and they had the nerve to message me and you responded back, I'm going to take that resume. James, you got me saying CV. I'm going to take that resume and I'm going to send it to the organization or state where this candidate reached out to me. Nobody's ever done that. Post a job, post a picture. I've done that on LinkedIn. Post a picture of yourself. Tell them a little bit about yourself and put your accomplishments, and then tag the living hell out of every freaking company. You see on some of my posts, when you tag them at the company, tag the living hell out of them, all of them. Put 50 under comments at the company's name. Then put 50 people that work there. You don't have to be connected with them. Put at Dave Wilson, right? Because I'm going to get a notification that somebody mentioned me on LinkedIn. Think about it. What is the worst thing that can happen right there? Like that video, like that. Let me talk to the candidate. It only takes one time. So on that note, James, thanks, and Jill, thank you so much for watching. And if you get a chance reading this, please comment. Maybe some things have happened to you in the past. And the show, I like to just show people that there's options, and and know, again, to put yourself out there, make a change. Don't be afraid of the rejections. Try to follow up with the recruiter. Say, have you heard anything later on? And if they're a good recruiter, they will respond. If you have 10 to 15 jobs that you haven't reached out and you haven't had it, listen, it's not the end of the world. You will find a job. You have a family to feed. You have everything, your bills, responsibilities, college. You will find another job. I'm seeking for another employment. I'm looking. I'm in the same position as many of my colleagues are. So stay doing something while you're off. I love doing this show. I love learning. I get great guests on the show. I ask questions. You got to keep up to date. So if you are off, keep learning. LinkedIn gives a lot of great free videos. Listen, even YouTube, some of these TED Talks. I love TED Talks. You can learn a lot about it. Gail Miller, she talked about unconscious bias. I was able to get her, and she's a colleague. I was able to interview her twice. And that's how I learned about unconscious bias and everything. I didn't hear much about that. But my point is I reached out to, I'm like, wow, she's coming on the show. Why? Because all I did was ask her. And everybody's like, how'd you get her? I sent an email or on LinkedIn. I said, hey, I would love to interview you and introduce you to my guest and my following. And because this here is streamlined on 2 other social media platforms, plus YouTube, plus LinkedIn, all at the same time. So I have a Ring of Hire show for Facebook. Listen, to me, the reviews, how many people have viewed your video, it's okay if it's 15 or it's getting more and more, 30 to 100, but is it relevant? Did you learn something from it? Right? And all it takes, I keep saying to myself over and over, as I'm a job seeker, all it takes is one person to see a video of myself and say, wow, would I trust Dave? Do you think you can do the job? Do you think his skill sets, just like James and Jill, I know, Jill, you're working, you always work, but what kind of skills do you believe, what type of person am I by watching the show? And all it takes is one hiring manager to say, wow, I need to get a hold of that person and talk. So I got to get going, James and Jill. Thanks. And I really appreciate it. And I will let you go with this. See you tonight, 9 o'clock. Oh, not that. I'm going to hit the